cure us, but I say to you, we are the cure.
One says, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
They want me to spy on the Chancellor. That's treason. We are at war, Anakin.
Took scientists to be the high priests of our new world. Science itself has gotten corrupted.
And yet, when we needed it, the system has now failed us. And it has failed us comprehensively.
Yes.
Is that if the governor and the mayor are not going to take care of this problem, people will. People will uprise over you.
Pictures that we're getting in.
Can't hear me, eh?
Oh, there we go.
You can hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, right on. Right on.
Awesome. Well, I'm here with Cody from Canada, and Cody, I actually found him via Facebook. He just popped up on my feed, and it was a video where you were talking about this pedo who I guess got released from prison, and I was kind of annoyed because I like left the page, and then I went back to my home page and I couldn't find it again. So I was like, no, I got to find this video. So I just looked you up, and I eventually found it, and I watched the whole thing, and I was really interested in that situation that was going on there. So if we could just start with kind of what's going on with that situation, and then if you want to talk about maybe what your work is about as far as online stuff too.
For sure, man. Yeah, that was dealing with a gentleman, or I wouldn't call him a gentleman, but a guy named Wade Steen in Edmonton, Alberta. He's charged with raping a 8-year-old girl at knife point and filming it and producing child pornography with the attack that he committed. Sorry, I'm right by a busy street, so there might be a lot of background noise. I apologize.
No, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah, he never had his day in court, and they released him with a zero bail amount. And he went to go stay with his mother, and his mother actually lives about 150 yards away from his victim's house. So the community was banding together and set up a little protest outside of his mother's house. And yeah, that's the footage I'm assuming that you saw.
I did, yeah. And do you know when his trial is?
It was supposed to be on the 2nd, but I heard that it was moved to August.
Really?
So
did
they
give a
had
reason
it adjourned.
for that?
Pardon?
Did they give a reason for why that is? Why they postponed it?
Well, that's something that usually happens with a lot of court cases, right? The lawyers will adjourn and postpone things, and
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's just something as simple as that, right? They needed more time or whatever.
Yeah, and is that a problem that Canada has in general with those types of charges and maybe being a little too light, especially in this case?
Well, man, you take a look at the time a lot of these people get, and then you take a look at the time people serve for crimes where they've never actually hurt anybody. And it's worlds apart, right? Like a lot of times these people will get 3 years, and then they're out in a year and a half on good behavior, and they've completely destroyed somebody's lives. They've traumatized them, left them with emotional traumatizing scars that's going to follow them around for the rest of their lives. So in my opinion, yeah, we don't we don't deal with it harshly enough here. And I don't know if you're aware of the crimes of our government, but it seems like we have that element has infiltrated our government at a lot of different levels, right?
Can you go into that, Cody? Because I'm really interested to hear about that. Because my viewers, I do have some Canadian viewers, but we don't know a whole lot about what's going on in Canada compared to the USA, unfortunately. So if you could fill us in.
Well, it seems like Canada has been a hotspot for human trafficking and sex slavery rings, right? A lot of the stuff, like yesterday, I'm here in Ottawa right now at Parliament Hill, and I did the march to the embassy with Norm Traversy. I don't know if you've been following that at all.
No, if you could fill us in, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, well, basically, there's been a group of patriots that have been trying to expose a lot of the crimes of our government. I mean, there's been stuff filed to the RCMP, filed through the judicial system, criminal charges laid, private prosecutions, and all of these things have been impeded. But what they were trying to bring forward is information that our government is actively funding terrorist organizations. They are taking our WCB and our pensions, squandering the money through proxy companies, and using it to support human trafficking and sex slavery. And for anyone who follows any of the Q stuff or anything like that, you know, they're taking down a lot of the cabal and all this other stuff. Well, it seems like Canada has been a hotspot. Our banks have been complicit in helping launder a lot of the money, hiding the money trails, doing all these other things, right? There's a guy called Agent Margaritaville, and he released 3 names of Supreme Court justices in Canada who he has evidence that are involved in pedophilia and all that stuff. He released it, and the next day, all 3 of those Supreme Court justices stepped down, you know?
Wow.
And
that's some sketchy timing.
enough, the judge who released that, Wade Steen, he used to sit on the WCB. He was the justice for the WCB in Alberta.
What's the WCB, Cody?
Workers' Compensation Board, right? So accidents and injuries in the workplace, and seems like they've set up jackhammers next to us across the street.
Oh, we can hear you just fine, Cody. You're good. You're right outside your house?
No, man. I came to Parliament Hill for the Canada Day celebration. And like I said, there was a big march down to the U.S. Embassy. So the USMCA agreement, if you're not familiar, is an agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And it's supposed to be like a new trade agreement. And Section 27, in conjunction with the United States executive order, has made it so that other governments are not only able, but they are obligated to investigate crimes and corruption within the other governments that are a part of the agreement, right? So all of these things that have been ignored by our RCMP, by the judicial system, all these different things have been served to the United States Embassy under the USMCA agreement. So we're hoping, because people have been trying for years to find remedy through our systems, through our police, through our judicial system. And it seems like it's all just a big club of people that all have each other's backs, and they're shutting every attempt down, you know? They won't investigate the crimes. They won't engage in any of the things that they're supposed to do, right? Even when presented with a plethora of information to substantiate the claims, right?
Yeah. And I won't get your hopes up too high about our government being any better.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's definitely a problem that's, you know, it seems to be like a worldwide revelation that's going on. And I'm sure you heard about Ghislaine Maxwell being taken into custody yesterday. And that's just a huge win for everyone, really, and especially Americans, because of how corrupt it is. But I guess I'm not surprised that you guys also have this kind of pedophilia problem in power, because it does seem to be, you know, it seems to be everywhere, you know, like they just put pedos in power because they can control them like clones, you know.
Yeah. Just going to try to move and get away from this jackhammer a little bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure, Cody. Thanks. And And you're in Ottawa, you said, right?
Yeah, man, we did the Canada Day celebration outside on Parliament Hill there. We did the march to the embassy, and then a group of us actually set up a camp at the War Memorial, which is literally right across the street from the Parliament building. Like, I'll just do a quick pan here. Oh, I don't know if I can flip my camera or not. I'll just show. So there's the Parliament building right there and the grounds across the street. And we're sitting over here at, it's called the Unnamed Soldier, the Tomb of the Unnamed Soldier. So we're sitting at the War Memorial Park, and we've set up a camp. And we're going to stick it out here until something happens, man. You know?
That's awesome. I was actually in Ottawa last summer for I think like 4 or 5 days. I was staying at a hostel there. So that was cool visiting Ottawa for the first time. I did go to Niagara Falls when I was young, and I was like 12. My family went, so I have been to Canada a couple times, but just by plane the last time. But I've heard that when some Americans actually go over just by car, they get really harassed by the Canadian authorities when they're going over by car to Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you have any other info as far as other pedophile related?
Man, it seems like they released that guy, and then shortly after, I think now it's up to something like 16 sex offenders have been released into the general population at Edmonton, Alberta. And the group that was actually protesting in front of Wade Steen's house did a petition. They got a petition together. They got a bunch of people to sign to protest against the judge's decision and try to get it reversed. And that was actually reversed a few days ago, which is awesome. A huge victory, right? It does show the power in unity, the power in numbers, the power of people showing their disdain and working as a combined unit towards a common goal, actually being able to enact change, right? So a pretty amazing thing. And now they've moved to another pedophile's house who only served, I think it was less than half of his sentence, and he was released on COVID grounds or whatever, right? They're releasing a bunch of criminals and stuff from our detention centers. But it's funny because it seems like they're only releasing these pedophiles while there's all these people that are being incarcerated who are there for victimless crimes. You know, there was no harm, loss, or fraud associated with what they did. It was just infractions or whatever. And these people are still in the detention centers while they're releasing people who are an actual direct and prevalent threat to public safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The next gentleman's house. Yeah. I mean, and the next gentleman that they released, he is living next door to his victim. Next door, man, in the house right beside the victim that he was in jail for molesting, you know?
That's just absurd.
It's crazy.
Meanwhile, in the States, and I don't know if this is something that you guys have too, but you'll have like people who just commit like basic, physical assault, which, by the way, I don't think many people know this. You can get assault and battery for just touching somebody on the shoulder, or just giving them. Yeah, it's just and they usually do these, orders where you have to stay outside a mile of, whoever accused you of assault or whatever. Whether it's valid or not. And it's just kind of absurd that, they can release a pedo like right next door. But you said those victimless crime or criminals, they're being incarcerated for longer. Are those just like drug charges, or what kind of charges?
Well, yeah, for sure, right? I mean, that would definitely be considered a victimless crime, right? Somebody who got pulled over and had a few pounds of marijuana that wasn't through the legal system or whatever, right? And then get charged with trafficking. That's one really good example, definitely. Something that isn't harming anybody. There's been no fraud involved, so no breach of a contract, and there has been no theft or infringement on anybody else's rights, right?
Yeah. And what do you? Well, let's just stay on this for a bit because we can go pretty deep into it. So you guys got, it looks like, justices on your Supreme Court that are implicated within this as well, and it just seems to be a huge issue. And you said that you guys, or your government, there's evidence that they have been kind of state sponsoring this type of stuff? Is it with the goal primarily of controlling politicians, would you say?
I think that's probably a large way that they control our officials, definitely, is through blackmail and everything else, right? I mean, I've read a lot of information from people that have been insiders and trying to expose things for a lot of years, and they say that's one of the major tactics, right? The people that can't be overcome with greed, that they can't buy off, that they can't bribe, that they will set them up. They will set them up. They'll drug them. They'll do whatever they can to get them into a compromising situation, record it, and then use it to control them. Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. And what are your thoughts on your leader, Trudeau?
Oh man, worst prime minister. Well, honestly, I'm going to stay positive. Okay, I'll do it in a positive method. I think that he is one of the best prime ministers that Canada has ever had. And that's going to seem a little backwards, but honestly, I think he's the best because he has single-handedly shown people how corrupt our government is. His policies and the things that he has done has single-handedly woken up so many people across this nation to what is actually going on. As far as what he's actually doing, I don't agree with it, but the repercussions of it, I can get on board with because, man, I'm telling you, the amount of crimes, like he's told the SNC Lavalin scandal, I don't know if you're familiar with that, is this huge debacle. He was right involved in it. And,
could you fill us in, Cody?
Oh, there's so much information. I suggest anyone go out there and check this stuff out. It was the SNC Lavalin scandal. It was a huge scandal that happened in our government with the Liberal Party, embezzling money, doing all kinds of things. And when being investigated for it, there was actually criminal charges laid against Justin Trudeau. He instructed our police to stand down on their investigation.
Oh, wow.
Which is something that he should not be in have the power to do. And yet he did, and they listened. He actually had a trial scheduled, I believe, for May 26th. He was supposed to have his first hearing. And with the COVID stuff, they shut it down as a non-essential case, right?
Yeah, it's been, this whole COVID thing's kind of gotten in the way of a lot of justice, and I think that's partially why it's being milked so much.
Right.
What is your take of the whole pandemic?
Well, I think that there is a real virus strain, a different version of the coronavirus, obviously. But I don't think that it is as bad as what we've been told. I think the numbers have been hyperinflated. I mean, it's been pretty evident for anyone who's been following the major institutions like the World Health Organization, the CDC. They've been flip-flopping like a fish out of water, retracting their numbers. There's so much evidence out there that's been given to the public that actually shows, like the World Health Organization recommendations for labeling someone a COVID death. And it's people who don't even have it, right? People, the majority of people who have died from it have been people with pre-existing conditions. They've been over 63 years old or 83 years old, I think, in Canada. Can't remember the exact number, but I know the original model and template that the whole global shutdown was created upon. The man who created it himself came forward 2 weeks later and said, whoa, this is wrong. This is all wrong. It isn't going to be a fraction of that. And yet they carried forward on those models that the man who created it himself said that, the models were bogus and he made a mistake, right? What we're seeing is an unprecedented power grab, not just here in Canada, but globally, right? They're using this pandemic as a scapegoat and a way to get people to support the deprivation of their rights, and people are so willingly accepting it under the ruse of this pandemic, I think it's also to help condition people, to make people afraid of each other, to stop people from assembling in groups. When people get together and they have conversations, that's what, spurs forward the truth. And it seems like they only want us to be getting our information from the mainstream media and government institutions, and really don't want people to come together and be speaking together about all these things, right?
Yeah. And are there any, you mentioned the mainstream media, are there any, media sources? Like, what media sources do you go to, Cody?
Honestly, man, I deal with a lot of anonymous posters. Like, I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. If it's like things like medical things, I look to the Lancet, stuff like that for information on things like water fluoridation. Even for the ventilation machines, they've released publications that show that it is actually the opposite of what the government is pushing it at, that the ventilators are actually more detrimental to people that have COVID and, things like that. So that's one good source. Honestly, I stick to alternate media because I've found a hell of a lot more truth in alternate media than I think I've ever seen on the mainstream. And a really good example of that is actually on the 1st, I think it's the 3rd today. Yeah, it's the 3rd. So 2 days ago, Canada Day, on Parliament Hill, there was thousands of people here. Thousands. Justin Trudeau did an address and said, Queen Street's pretty quiet today, and they showed a CCTV camera with nobody here. When there's hundreds of alternate media coverage and live feeds from this event, and there was literally thousands of people. You look at the main broadcasting networks like CBC. If you try to do a search on Parliament Hill Canada Day 2020, you will be hard pressed to find any news broadcast network, newspaper, anybody who accurately covered this event. And that's on the left and right sides of the different media networks.
So they just must have used an old CCTV recording and like stuck it in there.
Right.
That's messed up, man. That's crazy. And speaking of the CBC, I don't really watch Canadian media, but I have learned about the CBC recently because this one guy was saying that he was on, because it's a national, a media source for you guys, and I guess state sponsored completely, similar to our media like CNN and stuff.
Taxpayer funded.
Right, yeah. Right. And they were saying that this woman, this radical feminist, was like advocating for killing male babies on the CBC. Apparently, I didn't find the clip, but I certainly find it believable because I have seen other kind of stories like that popping up. But.
Well, I find that they will report partially on the truth. Like somebody had told me, and I've seen this in the past with newspaper articles, everything. Well, they'll release it and then immediately take it down from their websites or don't post it to their website. So it's like you get to see it for like a week or a couple days, or even only catch it while it's on the news, and then they don't put it on their website, so it isn't viewable afterwards, So kind of gives them the plausible deniability of, we've covered it, you know what I mean? But they don't leave it there for people to look up afterwards, right?
Yeah, so not many people actually see it. And
right. Limit the exposure, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that's the exposure is changing too with alternative media as it becomes more and more popular. And I definitely have moved because when I was younger, I was just not interested. I actually actively disengaged and kind of repelled politics.
Yeah.
But with our last election, it woke me up, or it started the process of me waking up, because they're just wrong over and over and over again about everything. Like Hillary's gonna win. Like everyone was so certain, and that she lost, and I was like, hell, man, like what am I listening to? And that kind of started my whole process of trying to find out the truth, so to speak. And I don't know if you want to give any shout outs to some good alternative media that you like to go to.
What's Up Canada is a good source. They're actually here at this camp with us. There's several patriot groups out there. Winnipeg Alternate Media. There's lots of groups that are doing boots on the ground events across Canada and covering these things. There's a lot of just individuals who are doing live videos, like I've been doing. And we don't really consider ourselves alternate media, but we're trying to show people what's happening that they're not seeing, And honestly, I think that moreover than just alternate media groups, I think that we all need to be the media, man. Like at these events, when these things are happening, what a better way to spread the message than to do our own live videos. And that way it's being subjected to everybody's social networks. It's like 6 ways of separation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like, I don't even know why you popped up on my timeline. It must be because we have a mutual friend or something. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure, or maybe because I don't even know how a lot of Facebook algorithms work anymore. They just seem so
Yeah, they
random,
change
you
it
know?
all the time, right? As soon as people start figuring it out, it gets altered.
Right,
It's
right,
almost like
and
they will go to a new platform, and then when people start figuring that out, they'll even switch back to an older one for a bit while they're working on the next. Like I've noticed
yeah.
that, man. They'll change formats and go back to older versions. It seems, and
Yeah, and I deleted my Facebook for a couple years, but I made a new one just because for connecting with people, it's pretty good. But yeah, like like I said, I went to your video and then I left for a second and I went back to the homepage. I couldn't find it anywhere. I was like scrolling for minutes. I was like, dude, I can't find his video. But I just like typed Cody in and I was like, shoot, man, I think I can find his profile. Unfortunately. I did, and that's really good because I think you are doing great work, especially with you're reporting on these pedos because it's just crazy, man, and like it's definitely something that I think I don't know about Canadians, and maybe you could speak on this, but Americans are very they're just not really aware of by and large what's actually going on. Like
here
my
it's in our
grandparents,
face. Like,
yeah,
man, they've put this stuff into our education system. I think that's happened in the United States as well, where they're having our children being subjected to these ideals at a young age. Doing story time hours with I don't care, man, what a person's sexual preferences and stuff. I actually have no qualms. That's their road to hoe, their decision,
of course.
their cross to bear, if you will, whatever, right? But when it comes to our children's minds and our education systems and stuff like that, that's where I draw the line, right? And it
Are you
almost seems like
referring
there's
to the drag queen story time?
right,
Oh,
right.
oh
Drag
yeah, 'cause they're
queen
doing that in
story time. The fact that they're teaching kids in like grade 4, grade 6 about anal sex and stuff like that. I mean, I really don't believe that there's any place for that. Like, let the kids be kids.
Yeah.
They're gonna find out about this stuff when they're older. Why do we need to condition them to that when they're young? I saw years ago when they started talking about pedophilia as though it was a disorder rather than a crime in the UK, and telling people that this was all part of a normalization agenda, and that they were going to be using the LGBT movements to spur this stuff forward. And people were calling me a xenophobe and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I haven't said anything bad about your choices. I've only spoken bad about the direction that it seems to be going in. And people said, oh, well, that'll never happen. That's crazy. Like, even my own family, my own brother told me I was crazy. And then it started happening. And, it's like, okay, now what? Because here it is. It's in our face. This is exactly what's happening. Exactly, what I was telling you that it's leading towards. And people still won't face it, I don't know.
I think. Would you say that's because of? And this is something again I didn't really fully understand. Is you guys are subject to the Queen?
Well, I don't know. That's kind of a gray area. The crown. I've seen case law that says the crown doesn't represent a monarch as it traditionally did, but in Canada, the crown now is a power that is vested to representatives and positions of authority that is exercised through a body of individuals holding public office.
Okay, okay. So I mean, you guys aren't part of the United Kingdom, but you're is it a Commonwealth? Is that what it's called?
Well, that's up for debate as well. It seems that what the world is told, and even what we've been told about our nation's history, is a complete lie, and they've hidden that lie. We were released as a dominion in 1931 under, I believe it was the reign of King George V. And the British Parliament issued the Statute of Westminster, which released all of the dominions from the Commonwealth and gave them the ability to draft their own constitutions and become their own sovereign nations. Well, interestingly enough, in the Canadian parliamentary system, the next day, they went, the Dominion lives on, and carried on under false pretenses as though we were still a part of the Dominion, And Yeah, pretty interesting history. I guess in 1982, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, so Justin Trudeau's father, in 82 said that he was going to make Canada a sovereign nation. And he went to the British Parliament to have the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms drafted. And he came back with that document and told everyone, look, now we're a free and sovereign nation. Even though it wasn't something that was created by, for, and of the people, you know, the way a constitution is actually supposed to be formed, created, and ratified, it was brought to another government's parliamentary system, and we asked for them to create and ascend our own constitution, which it isn't even a constitution, it's a charter. And if you know anything about business, you don't, well, or constitutions even, you don't charter a constitution, you charter a corporation, right? And so basically we've been running under this false pretense that we have a constitution, we have these things, when in all actuality it's a lie. And that is why we've set up here. We're trying to educate people that our government is in fact an unlawful government that is not a government at all, but it is actually a corporation that has fraudulently and manipulatively hoodwinked the people and stolen the power from. You know, and this can be shown with true historical record. So there's many groups across Canada that are pushing for constitutional reform, that are trying to get this information out there, but are being heavily censored and completely ignored. I mean, I've known this information as far as our government being de facto for many years, and trying to tell people that is a pretty hard pill for them to swallow, right?
Oh yeah.
But then we have all these political parties that are pushing for separation and constitutional reform and all these things, but they're pointing to statutes that were created by this unlawful, fraudulent corporation masquerading as our government. And they have been at this stuff for years. So the way they have their remedy constructed is actually gives the semblance of something that can be successful, when in actuality, it's nothing more than that. It's the appearance of potential. But when you really read and understand the statutes, it's really easy to understand that it's just a runaround. You know, it's a segue. It's a way to keep us wasting our time. And I've done videos with some of the representatives from these political parties, and they even agree that the information that we're trying to present and several other groups are trying to present is indeed factual, and it's true. And that what they're pushing as remedy isn't actually remedy at all. And yet they say, oh, well, the people aren't ready for the truth. So, you know, it's easier to sell the lie than it is the truth. And they've actually been on record saying this stuff, that they know the information's true, but they would rather sell the people the lie.
Damn. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that history, Cody, because we in America, we don't learn much about even our own history, let alone other people's, you know, other countries' history. I don't know. Do you guys learn U.S. history in school?
I did. I'm not sure what the curriculum is now as far as that. I have a daughter who's in school, but she hasn't really been doing much history homework from what I've seen. I've been helping her more with her math and everything. So,
okay, gotcha. Okay,
but I know when I was young, man, we learned about Canada's history. We learned about the United States. We learned about China. We learned about the old Russian Tsarism and stuff. Like, I remember reading about Nicholas Romanov II and the last reign of the Tsars of Russia and the Bolshevik Revolution. We covered all kinds of stuff. It was amazing. Right back to Greek history and all kinds of stuff. You know.
Wow, it sounds like you had a better curriculum than we do here in the U.S. Certainly. We don't, you know, it's just, you know, obviously there is some sort of, you know, framing of history that I think every nation has, but I don't know. I just, at the same time, I think people should be, you know, given that knowledge, or at least, you know, the awareness that sort of history exists, you know, maybe not going 100% deep into it, but what you said about Trudeau and his father, I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that his father was in power too. That's just like the Bushes.
Right.
Yeah, it's just nepotism, just handing it off the reins to the son. And Trump too. He's got his kids, both his kids in government, high government positions as well. So it's definitely seems to something that's even in these like Western supposed democracies that goes on. It's just extremely nepotistic. And I actually remember talking to another guy. I don't know if you know who the Grizzly Patriot is, Mark the Grizzly Patriot. He's a Canadian dude that I talked to. He
Mark
runs,
Friesen.
yeah, you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's cool dude. I've been listening to him a little bit, and we chatted. Must have been about a month and a half ago now, and yeah, he actually told me that kind of a little bit about the French Canadians and how I guess this kind of subsidizing or moving money from the west to the east is going on, and a lot of people are kind of really up in arms, so to speak, about that. I don't know if you give it a take on that situation.
Yeah, equalization payments, man. The Western Canada has been a lot more prosperous for a lot of years, and as a result, with our position in the quote-unquote confederation, which doesn't actually exist in fact, but it's another one of those pretenses that they push, and it's part of the fraudulent history we've been fed. But part of this quote-unquote confederation puts Alberta and Western Canada in a position where, since they had a higher wealth and natural resources, that we had to send money over to the eastern countries. But over the last several years, like since 08, really, our oil and gas industry has been heavily subdued. We've been taking a lot of hits, a lot of companies going out of business. A lot of the rates for employees have been significantly reduced. And it seems like we're still paying all of these payments, even though we're not as prosperous as we were before, right?
Yeah, and it's also kind of contentious too because of in the east, that's kind of where mostly like the French Canadians live, right?
Yeah. That's where Quebec is, Eastern Canada. Yeah.
Quebec. Okay, awesome. And when is you guys' next election?
I think that's not supposed to be we had our election last year, so it's every 4 years. So it'll be in another 2 years after this one, right?
Okay. And is this Trudeau's first term?
No, it's his second term.
Second. Oh, okay. And so he'll be out then next time, yeah?
I don't know. Everybody thought he was going to be out the last election, and he made it in. So,
do you guys have term limits?
Like how many terms you're allowed to be in office? I'm not sure, actually. If I answer that question, I'd be lying. So.
Oh, okay. That's all good. I mean, we have, I think ever since FDR was in, he was in like 4 terms, which is pretty long. And after him, they limited to 2, so you only can get reelected once, which I do think is a good thing. But yeah, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the U.S. politics at all, but I'm sure you've been pretty consumed with your own country. But yeah. There's the Democrats here, or you guys call them the Liberal Party, right? They just have no candidates that I can see that I would vote for in this coming election, and it's pretty polarized, definitely, this situation. And would you say it's quite polarized in Canada too?
Oh, definitely. It's and I feel that's part of the divide and conquer agenda, right? When I take a look back at the two opposite sides throughout the course of history, they've all been guilty of crimes against Canada in one way or another, and really when you look at the slow progressional moves they've been making, I believe that both sides have been ushering us towards the same end goal. Well, I believe it's one world government, to be completely complicit with the United Nations Agenda 21 and 2030 and global governance, right? I mean, right now we're under a liberal reign, and yes, there's been more things done under here that are atrocious than, the Conservatives. But even if you look at the Conservatives, Stephen Harper, the last Prime Minister of Canada, he was the one who signed us on to the UN Agenda 2030.
Yeah.
Which is right in bed with the sustainable development agendas, the right to remove property, to turn Canada into a post-national state, to, all of these things. And to me, that's treason,
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, this guy, he's a pretty known academic in the U.S. His name's Eric Weinstein. He was saying that it's time for heads on spikes, or another way people say it, the heads should be rolling, and it's not happening yet, but I think it's starting to with here anyway, with Ghislaine Maxwell getting arrested, which is just huge because Epstein has been this thread that is kind of unraveling everything in terms of the pedo networks and stuff.
Yeah,
which is great to see, definitely. But yeah, left and right, they're both shite, as one of my English friends once said, and it's just well. Here's another thing I wanted to ask you too is police situation, because I'm sure you guys have been notified at least somewhat about our police situation in the U.S. here. But what are your police like? I've never had an interaction with the police.
it varies from province to province, man. Through this pandemic, when the end the lockdown protests started, it seems like everywhere in Canada, the police were in support of it. They were actually, allowing people to peacefully protest. They weren't making arrests. They weren't. They were actually protecting them from counter-protesting groups and stuff like that. But where I came from was Edmonton, Alberta, and it seems like Edmonton. Here we go. We have a conservative premier. Jason Kenney is his name. So he's like what you guys would have as a governor or whatever, right? That's our premier. And he has instituted some of the most fascist or communist-like legislation seen across this country throughout this pandemic, and also more than in any time throughout Canadian history. Like, there was this bill entered called Bill C-10, which gave the Alberta government the ability to enact anything into law without going through legislative democratic process.
Whoa.
Anything, man. The ability to seize our homes, the ability to take anything they want. They could just write it into law and don't have to go through any of the democratic process to get it ratified or
That's
enacted.
like ultimate emergency powers,
Right.
Wow,
Goes
that's
back to
great.
COVID, the deprivation of our rights and freedoms and the mass power grabs. Like I said, it's not just happening here; it's happening on a global scale, right? You see this in countries worldwide right now.
Yeah, and I don't understand why more people aren't just angry about not only the police brutality, but I mean, that being said, I do think the movement has been hijacked here in the U.S. anyway. But like the economy, man, we have to get back to work. Like, I understand, like, it sucks losing grandparents, but like, not many, and I've definitely changed my, I try to change my thinking, and I do change my thinking as new information comes in. And I think, like everybody else, I was scared at the beginning of the pandemic because we all have vulnerable, I think, demographics of people in our family, but at the cost of like tanking the economy, is that worth it? I don't really think
the global economy, like you even see the World Health Organization is even saying that they predict that over 130 million people are going to starve within the next 3 years as a result of the shutdowns globally, right? The effects that's had on the trade and everything. Countries have quit exporting some of the resources to other nations and stuff, right? And the implications of it, I think we haven't even seen come full circle yet, right?
Oh yeah, I agree 100%, Cody. And it's just unfortunate. It's messed up to say, and I think it's a hard, I think, pill to swallow. But it seems like it's what they want is as many deaths as possible. It's what it seems like.
Yeah, I agree. In many different ways, like, it really puts into perspective through this pandemic stuff, and with all the floundering over the numbers and all the alternate information, all of the fraud, outright fraud that the media outlets have been caught in, reusing video clips from other countries, having their footage to be shown to actually be dummies, like prosthetic dummies being used in these clips that they're trying to show pandemics. And that, I forget where I was going with that. I kind of lost my train of thought, but I don't know. I think it's a good thing. It's waking up a lot of people, man.
And I wanted to ask you about your guys' native population and how your government has treated them. I don't know if you have any knowledge on that.
Oh man, so much. Right from the beginning, with colonization, forced relocation, genocide, slavery, biological warfare being utilized against them, and then moreover, trying to break their culture and their way of life, to try to take them away from their spiritual beliefs, to force them into Catholicism. There's major records out there that show so many horrendous crimes against the natives here in Canada. It's unbelievable, man. Really unbelievable and heart wrenching for anybody who understands the depths of it. Right? Honestly,
Yeah.
like I have a Native American daughter myself.
Oh, wow.
And she's 10 years old. She's Métis, but yeah, it seems like they really found the natives to be a threat with their connection to the earth, with each other, and with spirit, right? And I believe that that's why they were put under the gun so hard by the British colonies,
I recently discovered one of your fellow countrymen who is a minister and author. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Kevin Annett.
Kevin Annett.
Yeah.
Kevin Annett with the Supreme Court of Brussels or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah, he
man,
did a lot of
Go
work
ahead, Cody. Go
exposing
ahead.
the crimes.
Yeah. And I was listening to an interview with him, and I think it might have been I don't know, I can't remember the podcaster's name, but man, I couldn't sleep, dude. I couldn't sleep that night. Like it was actually earlier this week, and I was just listening to it, and I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. How do I not, you never hear about this stuff that's been going on pretty much the whole 20th century up to today.
Conducting experiments, murdering them. Like they have ripped apart churches and found skeletons, like piles and piles of skeletons in excavations and stuff, where the native children that were forced into these schools were, like I said, experimented on, used for medical experimentation, were traumatized, murdered. The Queen has even come to Canada before to take Aboriginal children for picnics and stuff and a trip to the beach, and then they just completely disappeared and were never seen again, And
Yeah, and I definitely want to read his books. He's written quite a few, but I think he actually has a free book on his website that I want to get into as well. But it's just so much information, and it's definitely something I want to get into. And I sent him an email. Hopefully he gets back to me because I'd love to talk to him, but it does give me time to read his material. But it's just so sad, and just like it takes time to process information like that, and you go through kind of stages of dealing with it. And I've certainly gotten, I think, better at it because towards the end of last year, learning about the entire Epstein case, that was definitely difficult for me to come to terms with. But, I'm at a point now where it's like, I want to fight these people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Hey, like I've honestly monitored the cabal, the international banking cartel, all of these things for many years, and literally spent years of my life beating my head against the wall trying to get people to review the information. And it seemed like such a hard battle, but nowadays, man, I see that how all of the people that have been out there planting these little seeds, they're actually starting to sprout. And watching the global awakening that's occurring right now is an amazing thing, man. And it's inspiring to know that everybody's efforts weren't a waste,
Yeah.
And yeah,
definitely.
like knowing about this stuff for so long, had the ability to gradually digest it and adapt to it and whatever. I can only imagine what people are going through that are getting red pilled all at once, all of this information,
Yeah.
Like I can't even understand or relate to what that must be like, because literally I've had it in a slow progression, like a drip feed, for years over all this different information and all the different connections and stuff. And I can only imagine what it must be like to be waking up to it all at once.
Yeah. It can't
Pretty
be a
overwhelming.
experience by any means. What kind of started it for you, Cody? Was it like an interest in history?
I think so. I think innately I learned at a very young age that the people that we look to in authority were dishonest, and that you needed to question everything. And I think that's what spurred me on my journey. Being a part of the educational system and learning about all these different things in history, I would go home and go on the internet and do my own independent research on the things that I was learning about. And I would find that a lot of what we were being told was true. However, there was an entire other part of it that had been completely left out. And then I would go back to school with everything that I had researched. And in the classroom, I would, raise my hand and be like, hey, what about this? What about that? What about blah, blah, blah? What you're saying is true, but you left out all of these really important parts that help people to see the full picture of what happened. Oh, well, that's not part of the curriculum, so we can't talk about that.
Mm.
And the teacher would even agree that a lot of the information I was bringing forward was correct, but then said that we couldn't discuss it because it wasn't part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And I think the more of that I saw, the more I was led to dig and look into things, right? The more I was vindicated that questioning things was the right way to go, and to never just accept something at face value as you're being told, but to try to do some digging and look into it for yourself,
Definitely, Cody. And it's another thing too is not only the curriculum, because I think that's definitely the biggest factor, but you also get some teachers that withhold information because it makes them uncomfortable to give it to people, and
right.
I think that's a huge problem as well. But,
right, where they bring their personal beliefs into the equation and therefore censor bits of information that might be in conflict with their own personal belief, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to thank you, Cody, for chatting with me today. And is there anything that you want to share or invite people to look at before we sign off? Maybe some, and also if you want to send me some links that you want to share too, I can put them in the description box as well. But any final asks of the audience?
Man, there's so many good groups out there. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Right now, I am working with the Canadian Revolution, and the website is www.thecanadianrevolution.org. There's several other groups out there for any Canadian listeners out there who are interested in seeing the full breakdown and the timeline on the fraudulent history of Canada. Check out The Myth is Canada, MYTH, themythiscanada.com. On there, they have a timeline section that breaks down with historical record the entire history of our country from the time that it was actually the Hudson's Bay Trading Company, and progressively moves throughout the steps of history and shows people what actually happened throughout the course of our history, not what we've been told by, our institutions and our educational systems. There's several groups out there right now that are working towards solution, looking to create unity through constitutional reform, establishing committees and conventions across Canada. Before I plug this one, I'll go back to the Myth is Canada. They're hosting Zoom room meetings where they're educating people on constitutions, the structure of constitutions, what should be in a constitution, what shouldn't be in a constitution. So they're directly, I would say, a good educational platform to understand our history and understand what it's going to take to create a constitution by, for, and of the people. And then there are groups that are actively building networks. They have established groups and committees within each provincial region, and are working to split them into zones, create committees, and move forward with conventions. They have drafts of constitutions that are available for people's review. That is http://www.unifythepeople.ca. Unifythepeople.ca. They have a plethora of information as well on there. And they host Zoom room meetings every day from 10 to 10 in every province. They're a really good resource. And then, what we got going on here, like I said, we're camping out at the War Memorial. We got our little tent village set up here. People are all set up, but here's the Canadian Revolution banner we got set up. There's a scan code there in the website, CanadianRevolution.org. We are actively boots on the ground, and like I said, we are making our stand here. The demands of this group are that every politician in Canada step down, unless they're willing to come forward and speak on the true history, the true information, and, quit trying to steer us towards bullshit remedy to get us outside of the sandbox that's been created to ensnare us within this fraudulent system and join us on the truth. There's so many different political groups out there that are saying a lot of the right things, yet they seem to be ignoring some of the most fundamental, truthful information that the Canadian people have been deceived about for many years. And that's why I really don't trust any political group, because it seems like even though people within them know the truth, they will not propagate it, because I believe it's because their parties and everything that they are working towards are intricately dependent on this fraudulent system. So they're afraid to expose it for what it is, for whatever reason. Or they have other agendas and other vested interests, right? So.
Awesome, Cody. That was definitely well said, and I appreciate you being a fellow North American warrior in this battle against tyranny. I'd love to chat again in the future. If you want to give us an update at some point in the future about how things are going, if you'd be up for it, I'd love to do that. But I just want to
thank you. We have a Facebook page. The Canadian Revolution is on Facebook. Okay. My personal Facebook, What's Up Canada, is another Facebook group. An alternative media that's also here in attendance at this protest with us. So we've been pumping out live videos. We pumped out live videos on the Canada Day celebration that the media isn't covering. So if anybody wants to check that stuff out, check out What's Up Canada. You can check out my timeline. All my posts are public. Check out the Canadian Revolution. We've been sharing all this stuff, and stay tuned for more. We've even had police come by and ask us about permitting and stuff, and they're actually really supportive of what we're doing, surprisingly enough. They've been really supportive. We even had an MP that stopped by because he saw what we were doing on the CCTV cameras and came by out of curiosity, and it seems like we're getting nothing but support so far. So.
That's awesome, Cody. And I will definitely put all those links in the description box below. If anybody wants to check out those websites or Cody's Facebook page, you can certainly go do that. And I would encourage people to do that as well. Even if you aren't Canadian, if you're American, these are our continental brothers and sisters, and part of the Five Eyes too, in terms of English intelligence, English-speaking intelligence. So, and that way they're very connected with us. Not only that, but that new trade agreement that Cody mentioned as well. So thank you so much, Cody, and thanks everybody for listening. Stay frosty. Cheers, and until next time. People.
Tu don't know, Monsieur. What my fathers did to your fathers, what your fathers did to my